Where's the Miata been? Hey, what's going on with the Miata? Do you still have that Miata? It's right here. And to answer what's going on with this thing, well, nothing. It's become a bit of a shelf, and there's a good reason for that. So let's talk about it, and let's do a little bit more work on this thing so we can actually get it roadworthy. All right, so let's get into the real reason why this thing has just kind of sat on the back burner. And the biggest issue has been all of this paperwork, thanks to the DMV. Now, this car has an interesting story. If you watched the original video or two when I first bought it, you'll know what I'm talking about. If you haven't watched those, well, go back and watch them, but I'll catch you up to speed. I bought this car from someone who never completed the registration process, and they bought it from a shop who never completed the registration process because a customer abandoned it at a shop, which is why I got the car with no keys and no real paperwork or title or anything like that. I had two incomplete bill of sales, one from the shop to the guy that I got it from, and then one from that guy to me. When I brought that paperwork, first I brought it to AAA, and they said, we can't do this. So then I went to the DMV, waited for a couple hours, and they said, oh, you're actually missing 6 more documents because the paper trail goes back even further. This is where things get interesting. Now, the guy I got it from told me it was a salvage title. I was aware of that. What I didn't know is that the last person who had this car on paper was an insurance company, meaning the owner crashed it, insurance company bought it, and then sold it at auction, and no one did the paperwork after that, which means it was never deemed to be roadworthy again because as far as the paperwork's concerned, it was never fixed. Well, we have a fixed, complete car that runs, but the DMV doesn't know that. So all this paperwork is still incomplete because we have to take this car to the DMV to get a VIN inspection. We have to take it to a mechanic to get a brake and light inspection that gets okayed by the DMV. And then we should be able to register it, get a title for it, and finally move forward. But at least we're in the right spot. At least we have all the ducks in the row as far as the DMV paperwork is concerned. Because if you've ever registered a questionable car, you know exactly what I'm talking about. It can be tough. It can also be very expensive. This paper was a lot of money. But we're moving in the right direction. And now that that's out of the way, it's time to actually get to work on this thing. Because while it does run, it is a driving car. We've driven it around before. Every time I start it, the clutch or throwout bearing is super loud. And the clutch didn't feel good the first test drive I went on. It was kind of like slipping in second and third if you really gave it gas. So I figured, well, might as well replace the really loud throwout bearing and the clutch that's on its way out and the rear main seal that's leaking. So that's what we're going to get into today. So let's get some of this junk off the car and actually get to work.
I don't think I've mentioned this before, but I do not like working on stock cars. I have fought with this thing, pretty much every nut and bolt on this thing, because none of it's been touched. It's all been factory untouched since, I don't know, 2003. Maybe somebody worked on it at some point, but this is the kind of stuff I'm talking about. Everybody's favorite rusty exhaustible, and the best part was that it actually backed off quite a bit. Like, it wasn't flush with this. It was a bit further down, and I thought, oh cool, it's coming right on off, no problems. And then it got stuck, and then it snapped the stud right in there. But on the bright side, the trans is drained, the exhaust is off, the drive shaft is off. I think pretty much everything is out of the way, so we can start unbolting the transmission and get this thing out of here. It's been way more of a pain than it should have been. I can pull the trans on the Z in like 30 minutes, but it's because I've done it 4 or 5 times. The exhaust is only held on by 2 bolts and 1 hanger, and nothing is rusty, nothing is seized. That's the difference of a race car or even like a track car that you street drive. But like, you know, if you keep up on your maintenance and do your bolt checks and you've touched a lot of the car, you don't run into these problems. But it's all right, we're working through it.
You remember when I said I hate working on stock cars because stuff is just harder than it should be? This is what I'm talking about. This is a trans bolt off the top of the transmission. It's way in there. I probably can't even get the camera in there. I spent the last like 30 minutes on that one stupid bolt. I'm disgusting. Knuckles are bleeding. Like, it ridiculous. And it was in a tight spot, but not the worst. but it was so tight. And I'm like, something's gotta be wrong here. And then it finally started to crack loose, and it spun and spun and spun and spun and spun. And now it just got really loose and broke in half. So that bolt is not going back in. But the good news is I think that was the last bolt holding the trans in. So let's get this stupid thing out.
What an awful experience that was. If you own a Miata, don't own it long enough to need to replace the clutch or drop the trans. The stupid power plant frame got in my way, and granted, it probably would have been easier if I was like up on a lift and could really get in there. That thing was annoying. This thing took forever. Granted, I broke it up into a few days after work and things like that, but man, it was way harder of a job than it should be. I really thought it was going to be simple because this transmission doesn't weigh a lot. The car is not that complicated, but because it's a stock car, nothing's been touched. It's been sitting for years. Everything was super tight and grimy and rusty and gross, and the trans is out now. We can finally get a good look at the clutch and the throw-up bearing, which was super noisy. I'm sure that thing shot. And then worry about putting it back in. Hopefully it goes in easier than it came out. Okay, listen to this. If you've never messed with a throw-up bearing or any bearing, it should not make that noise. It should be silent. It sounds like rocks are in there. No wonder it was so loud. Also, shout out to my Milwaukee Light. This thing has not only been a great source of light, but the transmission literally fell on it. You can see there's a dent right there. And that's all that happened. A little dent. Okay, maybe it's a little more than a dent, but it still works. Okay, let's get that light under the car and take a look at the clutch. All right, it actually doesn't look that bad. Looks like the rear main wasn't really leaking too bad either. I got a new one, we'll replace that regardless. All right, it doesn't look the worst, but it's definitely worn. You can see it's worn right to the rivets there. So it's not obliterated, but time to replace it. Like I said, it was slipping before, so let's get rid of this thing. As far as replacements go, real simple. We got an Exidy OEM style replacement. Pretty much best bang for your buck. I mean, comes with a throw bearing, pilot bushing, tool obviously, clutch, and pressure plate. Did you notice the complete lack of sound with the brand new one? That's what they're supposed to sound like. Rear main seals replaced, flywheels all cleaned up, new clutches in, throw-out bearings in. Still got to put the trans in, but I'm going to save you guys the trouble of watching me struggle with that because I want to get your opinion on this. Now, I'm kind of torn on what to do with this car. Originally, the plan was to make a real simple seat time car, use it as something to kind of teach Rachel how to drift in and maybe some other friends how to drift in. But I'm coming to the realization after having this thing for 6 months, 8 months, it's been a long time now, and we really haven't done anything. That kind of made me realize that, hey, I don't have the kind of time that I thought I had because my main focus is obviously the Z, and my main focus is going to continue to be the Z because as we're about to get into the new year, which means I need to have a more competitive car so I can push my program further, be more competitive, and hopefully make it further in series like Hot Pit or the Drift League, and eventually get my license. That's like long-term goal, and I don't know that this is going to help me get there. So the question is, what do I do with it? Obviously, it's going to get back together. The paperwork's going to get in order. It'll have tags. It'll be registered. So in theory, it'll be pretty easy to sell, and it would be a pretty good flip because I didn't pay a ton of money for it. And while I've put some money into it, it really hasn't been that much, and I think I could make a decent amount of money back on it. And I can kind of show you guys the do's and don'ts of flipping a car like this because I definitely learned some lessons and there's some things I would do different if that was my goal. The other option is I can do the whole YouTuber thing and make it like a giveaway or raffle car and say buy a sticker and you get entered to win. That's kind of uncharted territory for me, so I don't know how well it would work. But what do you guys think? If you're interested, obviously that could work too. Or if you just want to buy it, hit me up. Or I can continue with the plan of getting this thing together and actually driving it and taking it to the track and having some fun, which I'd like to do. But like I said, it's just hard for me to put in the time and the money it would take when I know that money should really be put into the Z, should really be put into a motor swap and everything I'm trying to do for 2025. So let me know. That's a little update on where the Miata's at, where my head's at with this car. And like I said, I'm kind of at a crossroads. Don't really know what to do. So drop a comment down below. Let me know what you think. Do you want to see me work on this thing and drive it? Do you want to see me put it together, sell it, and then maybe do a video on what to do and what not to do when it comes to flipping a car? But let me know. For now, that's going to be a wrap on this one. Now that we are into November, I have a stacked schedule of events, so expect a lot more consistent videos and some sick videos. We've got Drift Roulette coming up next. After that, I'm doing a drift demo at a super cool event that's got all kinds of fun stuff. And then after that is Hot Pit, which is going to be the last drift competition at Irwindale Speedway. If you guys haven't heard, they're closing the track down for good, and Hot Pit is going to be the last event there. So a bunch of cool content coming. Make sure you're subscribed. Thank you guys as always for watching, and I will catch you in the next one.